Hello, we have a guest. Hi, Tiny. Hi, what's up? A welcome from me, a welcome from the Tiny. Juniper. There continues to be a lot of bullshit happening, but this is where we can't give in to despair, people. We have to engage. We'll get into that today. It's another day, another stream in fascist America, becoming increasingly fascist by the day, hour, minute. Welcome to whatever this is, an attempt at providing education, advocacy, and a little common sense in this digital wasteland. I'm Aubri Devashrayee. Hello, Linton. Welcome. Glad to have you. Namaste to you, to everyone who is here wanting to create a better world, who wants to see the human in other people while also calling out people on their bullshit, not being doormats, fighting against the people who are actually hurting others, who stand for these oppressive powers, and a curse be upon those who are here looking to demean other people and who are aligned with those oppressive powers. All right, so yesterday we did not finish all of the headlines, but today in particular I want to talk about what is going on in the US when it comes to ICE. It's not isolated. I mean, no pun intended. It is part of this larger project of ethnic cleansing, a continuation of colonization. This is something we talk about here. This is something that we will continue to be talking about, but especially with everything going on, I have seen a number of liberal posts, people who are like, oh, you just need to like believe that things will change, and like bullshit that we need to have some corrections and provide resources. That's something I'm going to be focusing on, but also historical context. Because I have seen, especially in Utah, where I am located, where there are people who care, especially white leftists, supposedly leftists, liberals especially, but the main thread is centering whiteness, that people are not caring as much about human lives as they are about the environment. And that's not to say that the environment doesn't affect human lives, but especially when it comes to some of these older white liberals and leftists who have more free time and expendable income, that they care more about the land, which, again, this is all connected, but they're much more outspoken about what's happening to the land because they like hiking and shit, more than they are actually speaking out about the atrocities that are happening to people, where it's like it's all connected with what is happening with public lands and colonization, with expansion and extraction, as well as ethnic cleansing that is happening. This cannot be separated. So I'm tired of seeing that shit, and we'll talk about it. On that cheery note, welcome, Linton. How are you doing? What's new with you? Before we get into all of that, I did want to continue with the next episode in this faux podcast by The Onion, A Very Fatal Murder, as if there is any other type of murder. And this episode is episode 7, called The Curious Case of Michael Furnari. So it's picking up from where we left off yesterday. I am concerned about what this thumbnail even means. They're talking about this billionaire who murdered his wife. That's what this season is about. him having all sorts of examples of animal cruelty. And so this is concerning, but also part of their story. If it gets to be too much, we may not listen to all of it, but we'll see.
I told you a lot on this podcast about how, in my opinion, when it comes to killing his wife, Milo didn't do it. But if that's the case, there's one big question to answer. Who did? After being betrayed in court by my own hyper-intelligent supercomputer Ethel, who unequivocally called Milo guilty, I knew I was going to have to answer this question, and more. Not just who killed Liana, but how killed Liana, and why, and what, and when killed Liana. Is it possible that somehow the answers were sitting...
Found a new book for the list, the reading list, Decolonizing Methodologies. Ooh, I'm gonna have to add that to mine. Doing that now. By Linda Tuiwai Smith. It deconstructs the bourgeois academic research process. Ooh, interesting. I love that. Research and indigenous peoples. Amazing. I love this already. Yeah, especially when it comes to, just looking at this brief excerpt. To the colonized, the term research is conflated with European colonialism. The ways in which academic research has been implicated in the throes of imperialism remains a painful memory. Yeah, especially people as part of colonial projects would send in researchers and scientists, and it was a way to anthropologize people and diminish their humanity and continue colonial projects. This essential volume explores intersections of imperialism and research, specifically the ways in which imperialism is embedded in disciplines of knowledge and tradition as regimes of truth. That's in quotes. Concepts such as discovery and claiming are discussed, and an argument presented that the decolonization of research methods will help to reclaim control over indigenous ways of knowing and being. Wow. Incredible. Research, kidnap, abuse, infect. Yep, exactly. Experiment. All sorts of dehumanization, and it is such an incredibly violent process. And I'm gonna have to read this as well. Especially it's like coming from like the substance use recovery world, as well as like working for the state health department. There are many people that don't understand. They're like, well, this is what the research says. And it's like, okay, so it's good to actually be looking at things that are evidence-based, things that are actually shown in the real world, that we have data to show. But how the gathering of this information is extremely bourgeois, like what you were saying, the bourgeois academic process, and that it is intentional that many groups of people have not been included within the process of actually finding out information. Or it has to take these white people, especially white men, coming in and being like, oh, we have to do this and this, and it's an extremely violent process. And it's only after they have their findings that like truth is established, rather than trusting like thousands and thousands of years of truth and knowledge that is indigenous. Wow. I am really excited about that. Thank you for telling me about that. I'm going to have to read that. Sounds incredible.
In front of me? Also, just a quick note to any jury members listening right now. Please skip ahead to episode 8, otherwise you'll probably be dismissed.
So in this podcast, he's essentially like, I don't want juries to know about this because that will look bad for my client. Because he's somehow an attorney.
Stunning new developments in the trial of Milo Reed.
I'm an innocent man in a guilty world.
Objection!
Or the other kind of research, stealing ideas and naming them after yourself.
Eyes,
Yep.
that man
That it's only viewed
Liana.
as like valid until a white male capitalist, especially, or with capitalist backing, comes along and is able to monetarily benefit from an idea that they're like, oh, this is real. It's like anything that is viewed as like holistic medicine and health, that it really is a way, like when colonizers come in, that they dehumanize the people who invented these things. And it's not until you have these white capitalists come along, they're like, wait, I can make money off of that? Then that's real. It's like, okay. Well, it did exist before that.
Hug theory? Huh. What's hug theory?
I think
That's
a
me,
lot
the
about,
day after cross-examining Ethel
like,
on the witness
yoga
stand.
as an example.
I was exploring a critical
India.
online investigative tool known as Reddit.
Of like, I mean, I'm pausing this a lot, but how it is viewed as a spiritual connection with the body, a way to connect the mind, body, and spirit. And it has not been viewed as valid until you had white people starting to teach classes with a white audience or white participants, and then they turn it into some kind of sport where then they add goats, and then they add like extra hot yoga. It's like that was not something that was practiced in India. It's like, it's very hot there. Hot yoga is just doing it outside, you know? It's like this idea of like, oh, life isn't hard enough as it is. You have to like level up the challenge because you aren't experiencing as much oppression. That's just one example out of many.
While some consider it a place for posting funny videos and cute animal pictures, Reddit is also considered a premier hub for rational thought and online debate. Thanks to its network of users across the globe, Reddit plays an integral role in solving crimes and bringing lawbreakers to justice, especially on this subreddit, r/justice for Milo.
What is Liana is
Oh
Milo
no,
theory?
justice for
Just
Milo.
before the trial, Sydney and I
That seems
mined its
very
archives and
neutral.
found troves of unexplored evidence related to the case. There were dozens of users who claimed to have been eyewitnesses, former lovers, and something called an incel/nofap, whatever that was.
Whoa, so this one says that Liana was actually strangled to death by the
Whatever
octopus that
that
Michael
means.
Fernari was delivering, which I already kind of knew. But also that
Yeah,
she was
all
a
these
cyborg
billionaires
the
are
whole time.
incels.
Wow, they could be onto something here.
Going online, I realized there were so
If they didn't have as much money and they didn't have class, like, they would not be getting fucked. And why they do not value consent. Like, you really just can't be a normal person that is not taking advantage of others. Clearly not.
many theories the defense, including me, had yet to pursue. First, there was the hug theory, a theory that Milo was actually using his neck hugging drone to hug Liana, but accidentally hugged her too hard. Then there
Neck
was metaphor
hugging,
theory,
saying it was
a theory
hugging
that
her
Liana was
instead of
never even a real
strangling her.
person in
That
the
is
first place,
insane.
but rather a metaphor for climate change, and Milo was using her to teach us a lesson about protecting the coastline. But could any of these theories about Liana's death be true? If a single one held up in court, it could exonerate Milo, and I'd need to present it. So I called up an expert on the subject, someone known on the boards as Skeletor69.
So, Skeletor69, as an expert in asphyxiation, do you really think it's possible that Milo's strangulation drone was actually being designed for hugs?
Yes. In fact, the marks on her throat indicate that she was being hugged so hard she lost consciousness. I know firsthand that strangulation marks are scarier and far more intense.
Skeletor69 is a moderator on Reddit, or what they call a mod. He or she had a lot of interesting theories about Liana's death.
But do you think an octopus could really strangle Liana?
Of course, David. Octopi are incredibly intelligent and strong. In fact, each sucker can produce suction forces of 800 kilopascals. Perhaps the octopus was trying to hug her.
Whoa, yeah, I hadn't thought of that.
Like most of the internet, Skeletor's theories were brilliant, yet hard to dissect. Believing them was one thing, but proving them was a whole different ballgame.
No, sir, you may not drop a corpse into the
So
Santa
essentially,
Monica
they
Pier
sound
Aquarium,
cool, but they're
even
not
if it is for
real
a court
or
case.
realistic.
Why would you say that my baby was actually Milo Reed? Why would you say that? He murdered her!
Hey, Sydney, I think I dropped my keys in this fish tank. I'm gonna need you to drive over here. Thanks.
Also, who knows? Liana could have died in 9/11.
Yeah, that's true.
I'll say this now. Convincing a jury that Liana died in 9/11 would have taken far too much time, and there was no way I could subpoena the Pentagon with just a few weeks'
That
notice.
is the internet.
And then, per usual, that's law speak for, as usual, the justice system got in the way.
Honorable Judge Nazarian, I would like to enter into evidence r/justice for Milo.
Objection. Speculation.
Sustained. Mr. Pascal, if the defense wishes to enter justice for Milo into evidence, it must be done as a single theory, not a whole subreddit.
The systemic suppression was almost more than I could bear. Perfectly good evidence just brushed aside. It can beat down even the best celebrity attorneys sometimes, and that's how the system wins. But luckily, there was one theory that I did have the time, energy,
That's
and
how the
resources
system
to
works.
prove.
I like how he is saying, like, the system is suppressing him only when he can't just do what he wants.
And it was none other than Milo Reed's.
That witness, Michael Fernari, that guy's an incest freak.
This episode of A Very Fatal Murder is brought to you by Book Talk. Are you too stupid to read? Or are your hands both broken and in casts, making it impossible to turn the pages? No problem. From literary classics to modern bestsellers, Book Talk gives you access to a huge audio database of someone reading the book out loud to you, and you can even slow it down so that your tiny brain can keep up. Sign up now or after your hands heal and get 10% off your first month. Stop reading today with Book Talk.
I saw it with my own eyes. He was there that night.
You'll remember that Michael Fernari was the contractor delivering an octopus to Milo's indoor artificial tide pool the night Liana died. He's the prosecution's key witness and claims he saw Milo leaving the crime scene just after the murder.
Michael Fernari? Testify against me? I'd like to see that cousin-lusting incest freak try and take me down.
Right, yeah, total incest freak, yeah. What you just heard was from the first conversation that Milo and I ever had. I didn't include it back in episode 3 because I wanted the season to be a little more nonlinear. Also, it didn't make much sense back then. But now, if Michael Fernari actually was an incest freak, I knew the jury wouldn't trust his testimony. So I started the preliminary search into Fernari's social media presence. Retweets, Facebook comments, Instagram likes, thousands of interactions online. And the people he was connecting with the most? His family. Even more perverse, he was constantly telling them he loved them. I had the sick feeling I wasn't dealing with your average incest enthusiast, but a bona fide incest freak, just like Milo said. All right, here we go. Camera 1, you rolling? He's here. 3 weeks ago, I created a Facebook account for a fake woman named Molly Trumbull. As Molly, I messaged Michael Fernari claiming I had recently received the results from a 23andMe kit indicating we were half-siblings via Michael's dad, Robert, who I said had abandoned Molly's mother when he learned she was pregnant. Following weeks of back and forth, I finally lured Fernari to a house outside Long Beach under the pretense of a family reunion.
Hey, Michael, it's me, your half-sister. Want to come in and get to know each other better?
What you're hearing is an actor I hired to voice Molly. Sydney refused to help out on this one, and I didn't want the stunt to put any women in real danger, so Molly is played by an 11-year-old boy named Colin. And don't worry,
now
there's
he's
no real
caring
blood
about
relation.
putting people in danger.
I can't wait to come downstairs and finally meet you, Michael. I wonder if you'll share any family resemblance.
What's that?
The following is what happened between Molly and Michael Fernari. Is he an incest freak? And would his perverted tendencies be enough to poke holes in his testimony? You be the judge.
I think my good looks got passed down from our shared dad. And if you look half as hot as I do, wow.
I'm sorry, I can't hear anything you're saying. Can you please come downstairs?
Why does she need to come downstairs? So you can have sex with her, you pervert?
Hey,
oh my God.
Milo's lawyer? What are all these cameras? What is this?
You tell me. Oh my God, you brought a kid to an incest meetup? You are one sick puppy.
Wait, well, why are you here?
And then also, wait, is this person also an actor with lines? Because the kid is, from what he said earlier.
Here's Molly. I'm supposed to be meeting my sister right now.
Have a seat, Michael. Why did you come here today?
Because I wanted to meet my half-sister. I really don't have much family.
And you wanted to meet her, so you could seduce her.
No, I wanted to grab coffee somewhere, but she said we had to meet here.
Oh, I know. I sent you those messages, and you fell for them because you're a cousin-lusting deviant.
Oh my God.
I know all about how
it is
the
an
incest
actor.
gene is passed down, Michael. You
Because he's just having this made-up scenario.
We got it from your mom and dad, who you love sexually.
Oh my God, you are sick in the head. You're just like Milo.
I don't think
you're
the
a
prosecution's
lunatic.
gonna be happy when they find out their key witness crossed county lines to solicit his own half-sister for sex.
What else are you lying about, Fernary?
The sting operation didn't end in handcuffs and a tearful straight-to-camera confession as I'd hoped, but it wasn't a complete loss. I was able to at least insinuate that Fernary could be an incest freak.
The sting operation. So I guess Fernary, that was the real recording. Again, the voice actor for a child, which, like, they actually had to have a kid read those lines, which is concerning.
Thanks to some carefully edited footage that I uploaded to Reddit with a message encouraging users to investigate the matter themselves. 11 minutes after the video uploaded, Redditors posted Michael's home address. 80 minutes later, a user posted a photo of his children waiting for their school bus. And a couple hours after that, 2 users posted a video of themselves standing in the Fernary's living room. Finally, 9 hours after the original video went up, prosecutors announced Fernary had withdrawn his testimony in the Milo Reed case and fled the country. With his family, no less. Yuck. No one can definitively say for certain whether Michael Fernary was or wasn't really an incest freak. But what's important is that Milo and I called him one. A lot. We cast a substantial cloud of suspicion over his
that's
testimony.
what matters.
But Milo's defense, led by me,
news
still had
cycles,
another bombshell
honestly.
up our sleeves. And it was about to blow. Next time on A Very Fatal Murder.
Oh, this is definitely the big one!
And overboard!
Ah, that's not a man!
Okay, Korean tacos? Now I've seen everything. This episode of A Very Fatal Murder was brought to you by me, David Pascal, and Onion Public Radio, as well as Future Farmhands of America and Big Dog T-shirts. Visit our website to donate to Judge Nazarian's re-election campaign.
So the
Since the
preview
trial
of the next
started, Milo has
episode gave
already
us
donated
no
a generous
information to go off of.
$85,000. And for this week only, he's pledging to match each of your donations, so please check it out. Even just a small donation.
Yeah, I wonder why Milo is donating so much to the podcast.
Really helps our case. And finally, one last thank you to all the Reddit sleuths, amateur investigators, and anonymous vigilantes who provided information on Liana and Michael Fernary for this episode. We could not have done it without you. Please, please, please keep those theories coming.
How professional.
For even more exemplary journalism, subscribe to The Onion right now. You'll receive 12 monthly issues of The Onion newspaper delivered straight to your door. But act fast, because membership is limited to the first 8 billion subscribers. Go to membership.theonion.com now, before it's too late.
Okay. So, the main thing that I wanted to be talking about today is the ICE violence that has been happening. Not only with Lorenzo Salgado Araujo, but also for this person in Maine, Johann Sebastian, that he was killed by ICE. We have to be talking about this as a larger ethnic cleansing project that is a continuation of colonization of Turtle Island. That it is white supremacy, it is a way to cause a lot of fear, clearly, and to destabilize communities, but also to quite literally erase people. So I wanted to show this video from Democracy Now!, as well as provide some of these donation links. I'm going to be sharing this in the chat. Excuse me. Okay.
Now, democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez as we turn to Maine, where immigration agents fatally shot a 26-year-old Colombian man on Monday as he drove to work. in the city of Biddeford. The man has been identified as Joan Sebastian Guerrero, the father of a 3-year-old daughter. One witness reported seeing agents dragging him from the car after the shooting, which was also visible in CCTV footage. Another eyewitness told the Portland Press-Herald, quote, "He was bleeding profusely from the head. He was talking. He said, 'I tried to stop.' At least 4 bullet holes were seen in the car's windshield. After the shooting, another neighbor said she heard a woman screaming at immigration agents, 'You took her dad, you took her dad.' The woman was with a young girl dressed in blue pajamas, who's believed to be Guerrero's 3-year-old daughter. Another neighbor said, quote, 'I watched a wife fall to her knees looking at her husband's dead body on the ground. I watched a little girl crying with a little pink backpack on because she's never going to see her father again,' unquote. Maine Senator Angus King's office said the Department of Homeland Security had confirmed that Joan Sebastian Guerrero was not the target of any warrant. The Maine Immigrants' Rights Coalition said he was authorized to work in the United States and had been issued a Social Security number. His death prompted protests across Maine, including outside the offices of Republican Senator Susan Collins. Last term, she was the deciding vote in approving $70 billion more for ICE and Customs and Border Protection. The killing of Joan Sebastian Guerrero comes just a week after an ICE agent in Houston fatally shot Lorenzo Salgado Araujo. For more, we go to Maine, where we're joined by 2 guests. Isha Khan is the wife of Biddeford's mayor, Liam LaFountain. She joins us there. And in Waterville, Maine, we're joined by Nathan Bernard, a correspondent for Dropsite News. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Isha Khan, let's begin.
It doesn't matter that he was here, quote unquote, legally. It doesn't matter that there was no criminal record to be going off of, whatever that even means to begin with. Like, what is considered criminal in a system that is inherently criminal on stolen land based off of genocide that has been functioning as it was created to function. It doesn't matter that he had his wife in the car and his little girl in the back seat. And she said blue pajamas. From what I heard, it was bluey pajamas. Cruelty and violence is the point. That is fascism. And it's not that it just happened with the Trump administration, to be clear. This is something that has been happening, especially to communities of color, where they have been under occupation by the police before this. And now we just have a federal agency with ICE that is doing this out in the open. This Gestapo agency that feels empowered in order to do this because they know that they won't be held accountable. That, like, oh, I actually have water for you. Like, these ICE agents acting like, oh, it's such a hard job for them. Of like, fuck all of them. Fuck all of them. And to people who are still having trust in law enforcement in general, because this can't be separated from the tactics of police, which can't be separated from their origins as slave catchers, their origins in the genocide of indigenous people, that they are acting as they have been conditioned and the systems have been built to function. It's like, this can't be separated. And the fact that there are people who feel like they don't have to care, or like, oh, I don't want to learn about it because it makes me sad. It's like, especially for white people. And particularly for white people who claim to actually care about other human beings, or to be leftists who are anti-capitalist, supposedly, that it's like, you can't separate what is happening, as particularly to communities of color, from the rest of all of this fascism that exists, the rest of capitalism that exists. That being a leftist, we need to redefine what this means. Being a leftist shouldn't just be anti-capitalist. It has to be anti-colonial, anti-racist, anti-sexist, anti-queerphobic, anti-transphobic, anti-ableist, anti-xenophobic, because all of these things go together. It is part of this larger colonial project to ethnically cleanse. So I know I have said this a lot and will continue to say this, but it just really can't seem to get through to some people of what is going on, especially as I have seen, like, in Utah in particular, that people seem to care about the data centers and when they feel like, oh, this affects me personally, but how they somehow can't see the interconnected nature of the people who are sponsoring and funding these data centers, the politicians who actually are having them go through with the rushed processes, that they are part of this. They are the ones who are for this police occupation, for ICE to be acting in the way that they do. These law enforcement, they represent the system that these politicians are functioning within. That the taking of land, the stealing of land, the extraction of land cannot be separated from genocide. It's like what you said, Linton, a little bit ago, of capitalist extraction always accompanies genocide and ethnic cleansing. We are seeing this now. And for people to want to just pick and choose the kinds of things that they are caring about, of like, oh, I only care about this because I live close to a data center. Well, how about fuck you if you care about that, but you don't care about how this is affecting people of color primarily, more than white neighborhoods who are suburban, who are part of upper classes, that like this cannot be separated from what is going on. The minerals used in the components of the data center too. Yeah, exactly. Of the extraction abroad that is happening, coming from the Congo. How you mentioned yesterday of being born in the Congo, like that low-key lyric, I believe. Born in the Congo, made in China, but I'm American. That it's like, it's this exact concept, this imperialism, this colonialism that is extensive and is across the globe. And so for people to just want to say, like, I know we need to like hold space and like allow people to change, like as I was talking yesterday about leaving Mormonism, of like, we need to view people as dynamic, of having the capacity to change, but like that also means that we need to hold people accountable for what their views are now. And that if they are not actually wanting to engage in this manner, especially the white people who claim to be leftists, who are not wanting to acknowledge all of this harm or turn a blind eye to it because they're like, oh, that just looks too sad to learn about. Like, this cannot be separated from what is going on, especially if you experience other kinds of marginalizations, not just racism, or like as a white person, if you experience marginalization in another way of like being in the working class, having a disability, being queer, being a woman, being an immigrant, that it's like all of these are connected. And if you think that this is not affecting you, like you are in for a very rude awakening, because already we are seeing a ramping up of ICE rounding up queer people, especially trans people who are white, people with disabilities who are white, people who are immigrants who are white, especially if they are speaking out against what is going on, especially if they are speaking for Palestinian liberation. That it's like, people take on risk just by virtue of existing within this violent system, within colonialism, within capitalism, and this white supremacist bullshit. So, like, if you have this kind of privilege, you need to use it. It's not enough to just say, like, I have privilege, and then, like, go jerk off to that idea while, like, not doing anything about it, but, like, complaining online. It's like, it takes real risk by just existing in the world for other kinds of people. Like, how about get out in the real world? How about put bodies on the line and try to actually have momentum in that way? Because it's like, we can all struggle with understanding what to do. I don't claim to have an idea or like a solution. That's the word I'm looking for. I don't claim to have a solution for everything that we are experiencing. And I think anyone who is claiming to have all of the answers is lying. But that doesn't mean that like we can't be trying tactics, and like picking and choosing these issues really is part of fascism. Too sad to bother learning and not that deep are dog whistles. Yep. Exactly. Thank you. Thank you. It just is so frustrating to see this, especially when there are people who want to say, like, have like the accolades. It's not even accolades, but just like feel like they have the attention of being online and saying that they're for something. It's a different thing when you are personally being targeted by what is going on. This new law over here is wild. Gotta get saving. I mean, it just is so shitty of like we all are experiencing so much of this imperialist bullshit, whether it's the US, whether it's the UK.
So this is news from Pippa Crerar over at The Guardian, which is that the government is potentially going to prescribe the IRGC, that is the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, as something akin to a terrorist organisation. This is due to new legislation that would have to go through Parliament, so Parliament will have to approve this at some point in the future to essentially make supporting the IRGC punishable by what could be up to 14 years in prison under current prescription laws, which is quite something. It's quite something. Now, it's worth pointing out that this is not just the only piece of legislation that's being put through that is going to be somewhat stifling of free speech and opposition to government policy. Because this combines with the state threats bill that they're also putting through, which doesn't just criminalize people doing things and saying things in support of prescribed terrorist groups. It nebulously defines state threats and therefore can pin people on being aligned with those quote-unquote state threats, regardless of prescription or regardless of the affirmative statements of being in support of those institutions overall, right?
Yeah, it's thought crimes. This is what they are saying of like people who are on the right and liberals who are on the right, to be clear, that are like, you're censoring me, I can't say this. It's like, oh, so the people who are doing all of the censoring, all of the banning of books, all of the making thought crimes illegal, like, I wonder who is actually being censored. Projection much? The State Threats Act, it pretty much gives the Home Secretary lone power to prescribe anything they like, they deem against state interests. How long before Marxism is included in that bucket? Yup, exactly. It's like all of these tactics are very connected. Of like in the US, they are now saying the FBI is targeting people who are what are they saying? Like techno extremists, anti-tech extremists, which is just saying you're against data centers. That's what it's saying. So like these same people who only care about data centers when it is close to them, not like they care about data centers that are happening in other places, of like, not to like be rude or like out people, I guess, but it needs to be talked about, of like one group that like I originally like started working with before like things got like it was not for me, clearly. But there were people who were wanting to be leaders who were using AI to help create like things for the organizing group. And it made a lot of people very upset because the original idea for the organizing group was to be against data centers. And they're like, well, it's not using data that is like from this particular data center because it's not built yet. And it's like, okay, so you can't claim that you're against data centers when it just is affecting you personally, but you're okay with data centers in other places that you want to be using this technology in order to like fight the system with their own tools. That doesn't work, and it's harming people. So you seem to only care about your immediate area and your immediate sphere rather than actually talking about how this is negatively impacting other people. As well as like the federal government saying like, oh, we need to be cracking down on communist thought, of like them doubling down on all of this over the 4th of July, and Trump being extra paranoid of him being assassinated because of Iran and the funeral that happened with the previous leader, that it's like all of this is connected. Of like any sort of dissent, colonizers do not like that shit because they don't like being told no, because it's all about domination. It is not about actually asking permission. It is not doing things in a sustainable way. It is not doing things in a way that is democratic. And so for people who want to just continue like bulldozing the people around them, especially when it comes to so-called organizing, that is a fascist colonizer tactic. To not be taking people's concerns into consideration, to just be doing whatever they want, to be electing themselves as leaders, rather than actually asking a group for input because they're afraid of being thrown out of power. That is fascist. Like, we have to be calling it what it is. And like, there are many people who like their hearts may be in the right place, but like good intentions, there are so many atrocities that are done with supposed good intentions, and people who want to talk a big game, but then they don't take on any personal risk when it comes to just existing in the world, or they don't care until an issue affects them personally, and even then sometimes they don't, because they don't view it as being affecting them personally. That it's like, any sort of dissent is viewed as criminal under colonization, under these fascist ideals that stem from colonization, that we were talking about yesterday, that it doesn't mean that there aren't inequities that could exist before colonization happened in certain societies, but that colonization exacerbates these things. And until we decolonize the world, until we truly grapple with that in tackling white supremacy, tackling stolen land, actually advocating for land back principles, advocating for reparations for people, because that is incredibly important to having any sort of justice in the world. Like, how can we focus on these other issues? That it's like, this is what it is all about, is the ruling class, that is, they're basing their power on whatever they can with these ethno states and these cleansing projects and genocide and extraction and settlers and settler violence. That it's like, it's all part of this larger system of wanting to have global domination, of not being questioned, of pretending to engage in democracy, which is why we need to be skeptical of elected politics, of like the people, even when they have good intentions, who are elected into office, often don't act in a way that is consistent with the needs and wants of the populace that they are supposedly representing. So like, what does that mean then? What does that mean? We actually have a democracy? It's like, we have to consistently have outside pressure. It's like the politicians who are starting to change their tune when it comes to talking about the genocide of Palestinians by the Israeli state, that it is not because there were all of these people who were elected into office who are all of a sudden pro-Palestinian. It's because there is outside pressure from the larger populace, from the masses, from us everyday people, in speaking out and talking about these things, of engaging in direct action, engaging in protests that are not sanctioned by the state, that are not sanctioned by police. Because I saw a post the other day, I think it was just yesterday, where someone was saying, if a protest has a permit from police, then it's a parade. It's not a protest. Of like, we can't just be saying like, oh, I don't want to get in trouble. That's what a lot of these so-called leaders in organizing movements, they want to be the face of a movement without actually understanding what that means, of taking on risk, and they don't want to be getting in trouble. They want to be controlling all of the people who are organizing and everything that they do. And like, that is fascist. That's a dictator mentality. And just because you aren't Donald Trump, just because you aren't Kid Keir Starmer, it doesn't mean that you don't have those types of dictator tendencies, that you are continuing these systems of oppression, which is why, like, especially with lately what happened with the Graham Plattner situation in the US, of many people, especially people of color who are on the left, saying that, like, calling out many white leftists and saying, like, you can't be centering whiteness all the time. Of, like, someone who is propped up as a savior, quite literally engaging in a white savior complex, that, like, this cannot be how we do things, because this is a downfall. And by just centering your own ideas and wanting to believe in this redemption story when there are all of these red flags that you refuse to listen to, it's like he engaged Graham Plattner as in the army in being a colonizer, in a very the face of colonization, being on the front lines of, like, this should be concerning. We don't want people like that in office, even if they have had a change of heart. Like, how can we even trust that? Who gives a fuck? How about people with no military experience? How about people not working for Blackwater in these halls of power? It's like that people should have the proof of engaging with communities before they are elected to halls of power, if we're engaging in electoralism at all. That's just like, people like him because they're like, oh, he's kind of part of the system, or was, and now is against it. And that he especially is a white man that people really liked. And in showing, like, oh, look, people can change. And it's like, how about we continue this distrust of people until they prove otherwise? But, like, I was going somewhere with that. I don't even know. It just is consistent with people who have been part of the system, who are viewed as still being part of the system, this reverence for the military and the police, and therefore ICE, that, like, it cannot be separated from trying to control our thoughts, of, like, what you're pointing out here with this law that is being passed, or that they are trying to pass. That it's very terrifying, like what this headline says, or this title says, of, like, they are trying to control our thoughts, they're trying to control our actions. It is not about actually getting our consent and listening to the will of the public. It is all about non-consensual domination, which goes back to the vestiges and the continuation of colonization.
Holden, great journalist, friend of the show, has been doing a lot of work on how draconian this kind of stuff is. And as he points out, the State Threats Bill gives the Home Secretary nearly untrammeled power to designate any group working to advance a, quote, foreign state threat. They are a threat if they pursue any objective that is inimical to the interests of the UK. Anyone who supports a designated group, like endorsing it or sharing its messages online, faces 14 years in prison. This is so broadly written that it invites, almost guarantees, abuse. In the context of a potential far-right government, it is madness to put such draconian legislation on the books. Now, Paul is absolutely right. This, as has been pointed out in chat, panopticon shit is awful when you think about who is potentially coming down the line. Both the Tories and Reform are open in terms of their authoritarianism, are open in terms of being able to abuse this kind of law to be able to demonize and imprison anyone who disagrees with government policy. But I think that this
also can't be separated from the criminalizing of Palestine action and the thought crime of actually viewing Palestinians as human beings. That, like, this is all connected with that. It also cannot be separated from Islamophobia and from racism, having white supremacy, and viewing brown Muslims especially as being dangerous when they are trying to engage in self-preservation to avoid this colonial expansion and violence. Like, that is very much connected. Hello, Photo Piodini. Welcome. There was a point when workers went to strike, bosses had the literal fear for their lives. Yes, we need to go back to that. The moment they stopped being scared is the moment we lost. Yeah, especially, like, with what happened with Luigi Mangione, how there was, like, this huge surge in a pro-CEO like sentiment all around the world, where they're like, it's the same type of argument of like a bad apple, like, oh, it's a bad apple. No, like, if you are enriching yourself off of the suffering of human beings, like, you need to go. You have no right to be. Like, honestly, that this is the same what people think about with like bad apples in the military, in like many kinds of militaries, especially when it comes to these white Western nations. But like not exclusively, because as we are seeing like genocides that are happening in Sudan and in the Congo, that there are these armies that are participating as well, that they are largely made up of people of color, which is why, like, as we were talking about yesterday, like how caste was an issue even before colonization, but that the colonization of India used the caste system in order to pit people against one another and to gain favor with the upper castes, especially the Brahmin caste, in order to make people feel special and then to oppress everyone. Where it's like, this doesn't mean that that is the end all be all of decolonizing, but like, we have to decolonize first. And we can't be getting anything done when we are viewing these oppressive forces and the people that are quite literally the faces of these oppressive forces, that they are just like, oh, there's like a bad apple in here somewhere. Like, not everyone can be bad if they only, like, we don't hear them talk about killing brown Muslim children. Like, we just have to imagine it, and like, we can't prove that they did. Of like, we shouldn't have to need that kind of proof. That sentiment was a very American thing. Your left is still European right. Well, yeah, for sure. Exactly. I think from what I could see, like, internationally, there were some people, because we live in global capitalism, like CEOs being like very concerned all around the world, that were like, no, like, this can't happen, and like all of this violence, when it's like, I wonder, under your direction, all of these companies, how many lives have been lost, like with the products that you make, or the care that you deny, like with insurance companies, or the workers that you kill on a yearly basis because of how abominable working conditions are. If you have not seen I Love Boosters by Boots Riley, it talks about this very clearly. There is a reason why this movie is not being released largely in theaters. It is very good and talks explicitly about workers being on the front lines of experiencing conditions that's like this larger system of having these capitalists try to claim this moral superiority while engaging in these deplorable working conditions for their workers, but also just like how they are even distributing their products too. Hello, Turd Bomb. Welcome. The Overton window is really far right. Yeah. It shows really how fascist everything is. And how, like, especially with the way people want to just, to the end of their days, people who claim to be leftists be in support of cops so much. We will be talking about this in a little bit, of like how we cannot separate the police violence and killings of cops with what is happening with ICE. It is all connected with these people who are protecting systems. They don't protect people. Even the concept of proof is deeply flawed, as we were talking about before with the decolonization of methodologies. Yeah, what is seen as proof always relies on the whims of the bourgeois. Yeah, the people who actually have the money and resources to dictate what is viewed as fact, that they control these things. I mean, we're still doing fascism 2.0 in Italy. True. Yet some of our fascist government points would be socialist. I know. That's what's wild. And something that, like, we were talking about when we were reading Marx is how in Europe there were a lot of socialist policies that were implemented in order to be providing like little like breadcrumbs for people to make it so that people don't have an uprising. And in the US, like, we are just so fucking disempowered. Most people are incredibly disillusioned. Especially the infrastructure of the US, of it being necessary to have a car to get anywhere, that like the way like towns and cities are built make it so it's much harder to have like a larger condensation of human beings, and or condensing, I guess, of human beings, because that makes it much more difficult for people to organize. And like, that's not an accident. I think people who have come from Europe, especially like during the World Cup, have started to see more of this, of like, oh, we're going to just like walk to the stadium from here, but meanwhile they're having to like walk across like a huge highway, and it's very hot, and there are not really sidewalks. It's not friendly towards pedestrians. It's like, this is intentional because it is not meant to be humanizing. It is meant to keep people oppressed, to justify the capitalist system and make it car-centric in order to have these class distinctions that keep people separated rather than actually organizing under common thought, common purpose. When a Palestinian journalist reports something, they label it, probably would. But when a white Western journalist in a suit sits there in a... No, you're good. Justifying their genocide, it is held up as irrefutable. Yup. Exactly. Of like, these racist systems cannot be separated from the colonial violence that continues. It just has a rebranding with everything that's going on. Like, why do we think that so many like white Western nations have been so reluctant to actually speak out against what is happening to Palestinians and against the state of Israel? It is because they are viewing Israel as more similar to themselves rather than Palestinians. That, especially when it comes to brown people, people of color, brown and black people, that lives are viewed as collateral damage, and quite literally collateral in slave-like conditions or just overtly slave conditions, in order to extract resources. Like, that cannot be separated. Fascist Party. Fratelli d'Italia can, according to new legislation, basically be opposition without retaliation. Oh my god. For one point, do you know which Italian party has squadrons of beaters? Ugh. Yeah, the most fascist one. You're good, Lyndon. No, I mean, especially when, like, I'm feeling a lot. It's like when we're talking about these things and like we're in our feelings of like, it should make us in our feelings, you know, talking about all of this, because like, we have much more in common with the bullshit that we are experiencing, that we should be viewing it as an interconnected struggle. And where I can just be like so frustrated, especially as we're going to be talking more about like some of these specific cases in Utah, that there are people that only care about things unless it seems to like disrupt their own like status quo. Where like, I saw a post the other day where there was someone that was like, I'm thinking about leaving Utah because of environmental impact. Like, has anyone else been thinking about leaving Utah? And I'm like, as a trans multiracial person, can I tell you I've been trying to leave Utah and stay out of Utah my whole life? That like, it has not just been a thing. Like, seeing stuff like that is it's so hard to even know what to do with that. And to be like, how do we like steer people in the right direction? Or like people who claim to be like, oh, I'm for Pride, or like I want to go to Pride and say that I wear my like rainbow stuff that I don't wear at any other time of the year, and also I'm going to feel safe because there are cops there, when in actuality, like the queer people who are there are going to be, especially the queer people of color who are disabled, who are immigrants, are the ones who are going to be the first to experience violence by these shitheads. Ooh. The bullshit multiplies. Yeah. Okay, I love this already. See? Look at this. I went immediately to the comments. Thank you for sharing. The Native people of America, see you, cousin. Yeah, there is much more indigenous resistance and solidarity in the world than what the media would like us to believe. Like, even for last Culture Corner, where we were looking at that dance that the Notorious Cree was doing at the International Festival of Indigenous People. I don't know if that's the exact name of it, but there was an international festival of people talking about their art forms and how art and humanizing each other, like this is direct resistance to oppressive systems that are trying to erase people. That like there is this seen and shared humanity that people can see. So like the fact that this is happening to like with ICE to specifically people of descent from the Americas, like particularly people who are Native, who openly identify as Native or have an understanding of their identity as Native, are clearly coming out and saying like, this is part of colonization. This is something we have experienced and continue to experience. It's not an accident that that people in the Americas, like that predominantly the language that is spoken is Spanish, which is the language of a colonizer and not the language of indigenous tribes, that it is part of this larger ethnic cleansing project. Way faster than you can react. I know. I know. And it just is like, it can be so disheartening to be like, okay, we have all of these people who seem like they and don't stop at anything in order to accomplish their violent ends through their violent means. And like, so what do we do? Like, is it any wonder why there is more militant resistance, why it is necessary to have militant resistance when it comes to opposing this? That, like what you were saying, Photo Piadini, of like, our oppressors have to be afraid of us. They have to be afraid of us in order to listen to us in the first place, because if they are not, they will continue doing what they are doing. Of like, we saw in January 6th, that insurrection happening in the US, that it wasn't even enough for people to, these representatives to even be afraid for their own person. They are more afraid of their power, of having their power be questioned, than their own physical person being threatened. That like, that goes to show the intense brainwashing and what they realize the system is, that it is much larger and way more powerful than what they are as an individual person. Hello, Nomar. Do you think violence against capitalists is okay, or how to challenge capitalism? I am going to speak carefully because of terms and conditions. I think, like, what did Malcolm X say? I think people should be able to find liberation through any means necessary. That, especially when people are experiencing the most kinds of oppression and dehumanization, that they should be the ones to define what this kind of resistance looks like and what the liberation looks like at the end of it. that like what are we even defining as violence, you know, of like we are experiencing violence all the time under capitalism. So like, is it self-defense to be engaging in having more militant resistance, or engaging in like arming ourselves, that like, you know, many of us are forced to do in order to still exist? Not being scared was their biggest win. Yep, I agree. The term violence is so obscured. Yeah, it, like, we need to define what it means. What if it's just a random capitalist on the street? Because I guess they play a part of it. I mean, sadly, we don't really see random capitalists on the street. And that is like part of this larger like infrastructure thing that I was talking about a little bit ago, of like, especially in the US, if there is a capitalist that is on the street, they're usually like being driven in a car that's like bulletproof and stuff. So like, they, a lot of the time, them and their like physical person is not vulnerable. This is why like they care more about their capital, and why we have to hit them that way, especially with like collective organizing power, because they are not interested in being among the people, because they aren't willing to risk that. They're afraid of us in that way, and they should be, honestly. I want to be a Fabianist with all my heart, but the concept of liberation without violence, it's only a win for those who are above. I've been on many streets. I see almost no capitalists. I know, exactly. They have like their top hats and their monocles, and they're like holding a cane. If I go by restaurants, I see people that look like capitalists, though. That is true. I mean, and people are class signaling, but like, how I mentioned, people who are in the capitalist class, the ruling class, the billionaire class, they hardly ever interact with the common people, because they view us as being too below them, and they're scared of us. They have to convince themselves that we're lowly and dirty and like too common for them. But it's like, you do realize you wouldn't have any power without us, that you have to steal our ideas, steal our money, steal our humanity in order to feel good about yourselves. Perceived wealth isn't the same thing as actual class. Yeah, that's a really great point. So it's essentially impossible to know. Yeah, especially with like the latest type of class signaling of like these billionaires like Zuckerberg and what are their asses? I mean, any of them, where they dress in like a t-shirt and jeans, where sometimes it's even more of a class flex for them to dress in a way, to dress like the working class, but it is them just like subverting that idea of like, oh, I don't have to appear like I'm wealthy because I just am. Or they go to an establishment that's very expensive and they are like dressed in the dress code that normally is what is required of people. That is a class flex. We don't understand how much a billion is. Yeah, we truly do not. Individualized violence does little. The problems lie in the systems that produce them and uphold them. Yeah, and so like I think that's a really great point as well, of like the Luigi Mangione situation of like, okay, so one capitalist is gone, like maybe there were lives saved from what happened, but also like he was replaced by another capitalist. The system is cold, hard machinery. It is made up of people, but we make up that system of the machinery. We actually make the machinery run. We fuel it. So like that's where they feel it the most, is that you have to directly confront the system, not just the people themselves. But, you know, it wouldn't hurt for them to be a little more afraid of us at times. He had a screenshot of his bank account in his t-shirt. We're like, oh, do you have like the routing number and the account number? Thank you. We will be using this. Can you imagine? A millisecond is about 3 months. A billion second is about 30 years. The low bracket of the top 10% is closer to those who have nothing than to the 1%. Yes. So even people who think of themselves as capitalists are not nearly even close enough to the 1%, like what you were saying, Piadini. The power is in labor, not in random adventurism. Yeah, which like doesn't mean like there isn't room for direct action, but like why direct action has to be very strategic and not just taking into account like I'm not going to tell people what kinds of like activism to be getting involved with, or like what feels right to people, or what is like just in a situation, because that is so nuanced and individualized. But also like we don't change anything substantially unless we are addressing the system as a whole. And that is where it is the most difficult to actually have change, because like it is very difficult to actually take down these power structures. I think Luigi did more for capitalists than against them. Oh, interesting. Things get tighter and people feel sympathy for a capitalist who's also just a father, yeah, who's wearing like these ugly like sweaters, and that's like, okay, yeah. I was gonna comment more about how I looked. I'm like, maybe I should not. Now on a more organized level. Yeah. Ugly sweaters. Yeah, especially when people are part of a certain class. I think we are it's free game to make fun of whatever. Not any part of like their margin, if they experience any sort of marginalization, which when they're part of that class, they don't feel the effects of marginalization. But anything like how they dress, their haircuts, like how they are presenting themselves, like the things that they choose for themselves, we should have that as free game to make fun of like their ugly haircuts, the clothes that they wear, because they don't have an excuse. But again, like this is why like we can never have taste and culture come from the capitalist class, because they don't know what that means. They only know how to steal things. And why it's just like this incestuous nature of like, oh, we just see what's around us as like what means money, not like what actually has like value within culture, because they only view things as like valuable with like from a monetary sense. My family is quite wealthy, but I think socialism seems funnier and more interesting. Funnier? What do you mean by that? Yeah, and I mean, like, we were reading a little bit ago, part of, or we read the manifesto of the Communist Party, and how Marx and Engels were talking about how, like, there are sometimes when socialism doesn't go far enough in making it so, like, there is this bourgeois set group of people where they claim to be for the working class, but they don't come from the working class. Again, this was something that people were warning about with like the Graham Plattner situation, but it's like that should go for any person who is running for office. But again, why like elected politics is prohibitive in nature to working class people from the jump. That you have to have free time, you have to have money, you have to have like a network of people in order to even be running for office. Like that you don't need to work super hard to get stuff. It's shared more fair. Like if you can't. Top 10% threshold in Italy is very low compared to the US. As well, people would do wild shit to be recognized. Yep, that is true. Yep, and that's true, Bounce House. Capitalists don't work. Yeah, so like people who want to think of themselves as capitalists, because like my family, like I come from a pretty like middle class family. My dad thinks like would love to believe that he is a capitalist because he like invests in the stock market, but he still works for money. And so that means that he is not a capitalist, because it doesn't mean that he probably is not engaging in a lot of exploitation in what he has done and what he does, but that, like, which needs to be called out, and wealth needs to be distributed, but also that, like, that is part of the propaganda and brainwashing that we are up against, of making it so people are not just believing that they are part of the in-group when they view the 1%, actual 1% that you were talking about, Piadini, that they are far, far and above the pay grade of anybody else who is actually working for money. Too long for stream. Ooh, thank you.
There are a lot of rules out there.
Okay. Yeah, we'll have to check that out this week. Thank you for sharing. Wealth doesn't come from hard work. Yeah. Especially when it's inherited. It's like, it's not an accident that these billionaires are largely the descendants of Nazis and generational wealth, that they have to build these frameworks or continue these ideas of justifying these hierarchies because they feel guilty, in a sense, about their position in society. And so they have to be like, oh no, I have to believe in Darwinism and say that I'm better than everyone. And it's like, because you don't have anything to prove for why you should matter, like why you're a worthwhile person, besides like what you have inherited. So you're saying you're a socialist until you're rich enough? Like you can't be a poor capitalist. No. I mean, people can be aligning themselves with a capitalist agenda, but they aren't part of the capitalist class. So I think like it's dividing it into like the ideology of like the like economic political framework of capitalism. Many people think of themselves as capitalists, but they aren't they aren't part of the capitalist class, which especially in the US is part of the brainwashing and propaganda of like the American dream, which never existed, in order to deconstruct. In no reality has wealth ever come from hard work. Meritocracy has always been a myth. Yes. Confusing assets with class. I mean, I don't think it's nice to work very hard, but I want the money, so socialism seems better. Asset versus class makes sense. Yeah. And like convincing people, like how I even said, like my dad, like he's like, he calls himself like, I'm not close with my family. This is something that many people know who watch the stream. Where like he would even say, he's like, I am an avowed capitalist, of like, just because you are calling yourself a capitalist, it doesn't mean that you are part of the capitalist class, or that you were not viewed just as dispensable as the rest of us by the 1%, especially. That it is something that you have to be born into. No one has ever, like what you were saying, Bounce House, like no one has ever like worked their way into the 1%. That just is not a thing. So even like many people have been saying that like the Kardashians are like recent capitalists, which is just not true. They have always had money. They lived in Beverly Hills. This may seem like a departure from what we're talking about, but I promise it's related. Of like related to the techno-fascism of it all. Even if some of them weren't billionaires before, it doesn't mean that they weren't part of probably the 1%, or very close to the 1%. Maybe they're part of like the 2% and then moved into the 1%. Of like they already had a lot of money, and like the Kylie Jenner of it all, of like her now being like the face of these meta glasses, these AI spyware glasses that are talking in her voice. Like it's just like ugly behavior. It's capitalist behavior. And there is really like nothing redeemable about that. But it doesn't mean that they are from new money. And I think a lot of people think of them as having new money, and that just is not the case. They already had a lot of money. My father built his company himself. He's in the 1%, but we are not in the US, so not 1% there. Yeah, does he need to work to live? Yeah, of like what you may be considering the 1%, or what he considers the 1%, may not actually be the 1%. Or the richest families in Pisa after the 1389 plague, they're still all top 10. Yeah, of like it's the same families. It's usually, it comes from the feudal system of like these, why we have to say ruling class, where they're part of like the kings and queens, or the people who come from generational wealth, that even if they don't have those exact positions of power in terms of like title or like nobility, that they are within like the money that they have. I don't think he will never stop working. This isn't to say like, oh, like your dad is not as successful as what he thinks, but like he may not be as successful as what he thinks. That's like, especially with someone, I mean, you do have to have like a certain amount of like wealth, like, and we need to be talking about like the levels in class of like people who actually have access to wealth in order to build businesses. Like that is a disparity that many people who are more in like the lower classes of the working class just don't have access to. But like especially if he worked in order to get to a place where he feels like he doesn't have to work anymore, like that doesn't mean like if it's like an early retirement, like largely he is most likely not part of the 1%. Like the 1% is very, very small and exclusive, and most of the time, like what you are saying, Photo Piadini, people are born into it. It usually is associated with a particular last name that can be tied to like the ruling class in previous centuries, where like their families were actually like tied to nobility in a lot of ways. These larger like early colonial projects, because like how I said, like even my dad, like he feels like, oh, like he probably says like, oh, I don't have to work if I don't want to, which I guess he's retired now, but like he probably didn't have to for a certain amount of it, because he's like, I'm invested in the stock market. That doesn't mean that like he's part of the 1%. In our culture, not working seems lazy. He sells for royal families. Whoa. I think it's more like he's petit bourgeois than explicitly capitalist class. The distinctions of class dissolve quite a bit in odd margins. Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Bounce House. Yeah, of like the people who usually don't have to like, who get to a point where like, oh, I don't have to work all the time, like my money is making money for me. They usually get into the petit bourgeois, where they are able to run for office. They actually have like the time and money to run for office, so they could be part of the bourgeois class that is wanting to get into the ruling class. The whole 1% thing is a kind of more international than national thing. Yeah. We have visited royal places, but we are not royal, of course. Yeah. So, like, there may be a certain amount of buying into the idea of, like how I mentioned in the US, there are many people who think of themselves as capitalists who are not part of the capitalist class. Or even if they work, how it's like, oh, I just want to be working because I find it fulfilling. That doesn't mean that they understand and can relate to all of the issues that people who are in the lower classes of the working class experience, especially if they are not experiencing intersections of marginalization, which like includes class. That I think many people can delude themselves if they do experience some marginalization, like race, like my dad does, that if he buys into the system literally, then he's accepted. And so it's a way of being like, oh, now I've made it. And that there can be even more even more of a delusion sometimes of being like, where was I going with this? Yeah, of experiencing even more of a delusion that they are not marginalized in some way. Is that if they are part of a certain tax bracket, that they then don't experience marginalization. And while like that may be limited in a lot of ways, that doesn't mean that like there are not ways that they do experience marginalization even in the tax bracket that they are in. I don't know if that helps to provide a distinction there. This is a good conversation, though. Thank you, chat. Thanks to all. Can I link a video? Yeah. Go for it. I'll open this as well. And we can watch this later this week. Ooh. Literate Machine has some great content. Yeah, the Zechap playlists really include some great resources. I was gonna watch at some point. There was this video that he came out with recently. Lindsey Graham, TLDR, that I was gonna watch on stream. I don't know if we have time for that today. My English. I mean, don't put pressure on yourself to even be learning English. I don't know. That's my take. Okay. Let's continue with this video in learning about the atrocities of ICE. But really, like as we were seeing these recommended videos, settler violence, maybe I'll actually go over these posts before we continue this video, just to make sure that like we have this information out there. So I sent this earlier, but again, like this is not a replacement for us organizing. Yeah, what you said, Bounce House, like I didn't even know that you didn't consider English as like a non-native language to you. This is a GoFundMe for the man who was killed by ICE, Johann Sebastian. And this is the other man who was killed just last week, Lorenzo Salgado Araujo. It's like, I know we're all being asked to like give money in so many different ways, but this is going to both of their families, not only for because they're both providers for their families, just like their families to survive and live, but also for legal fees and for expenses, funeral expenses, and actually getting answers for what has been happening to them. So as we're talking about how all of this violence is connected, the systems that are being protected, which, to be clear, like ICE, the people, like people who are in ICE and in the police, in the military, they are called assets for a reason. They are not called like employees. They aren't called people. That's because, like, even as we are saying, like, we shouldn't trust people who are in these positions, I maintain that. That has kept me safe in life. So unless I'm proven wrong in a very substantial way, I will keep doing that and saying that. I don't care if it offends people, because I think that's the truth. But even saying this doesn't mean that like the system that they are protecting even views them as having any sort of human worth, which is why there is this constant desire for union busting, including police unions, where ICE and their recruits, they want all of these bodies, but there are working conditions that has been reported on that ICE, they're under all of this pressure, which, like, honestly, who cares? But they exploit people who are part of the working class, who are needing money, especially where they're like, oh, you get a sign-on bonus, where most of the people who join ICE don't even get the sign-on bonus, because it's not about that. It's not about treating people with dignity. I don't know why I did that. So this is by Now This Is Impact, and I think this is very related, so I wanted to go over this. Law enforcement related deaths are rising, study says. So this is from police. This isn't even from ICE. Researchers say Black men ages 18 to 29 were the most affected. This is what people have been saying for centuries, what Black people in America have been saying for centuries especially. Law enforcement deaths rise. The number of deaths caused by law enforcement has risen over the past 2 decades, with child deaths increasing by 362%. Child deaths. There was a couple of weeks ago, I saw something about a cop like killing a 2-year-old. What has happened with that case? It has gone nowhere. A Yale School of Medicine study found that 11,775 deaths, 11,505 adults, and 270 children were caused by law enforcement between 2003 and 2024, which is only rising, like as it's saying here, but the numbers, I'm sure, are increasing astronomically even from 2024 to 2026. Using mortality files from the CDC's National Center for Health Statistics, is it any wonder that the Doge idiots, Elon Musk and his cronies, that they went in and they have defunded all of these programs, stripped all of these programs with reports on violence, especially, that this is reflected as well with RFK Jr. and his idiocy in defunding all of these regulatory agencies that, like, many cuts have affected health departments all across the nation. And like, we're experiencing this parasitic outbreak in horrendous diarrhea for people in the US because of food not being regulated and people not actually having these, like, certain kinds of systems in order to make sure that food is safe. This is intentional because they're stripping this in order for capitalists to make as much money as possible with as little oversight as possible. More than 87% of those deaths involved firearms. Yeah, Black men ages 18 to 29 were the most affected with the highest mortality rates. I don't know why it isn't showing the full picture, but researchers say these deaths may be underreported. Yeah, you think? Let's see if this pulls it up. No. Weird. So the true total could be higher. Yeah, exactly. This also came out a little bit ago. 17 Mexican nationals have died at the hands of ICE, and Mexico is seeking criminal charges. This is a little more recent. 3 days ago, though, so like this came out after the death of this gentleman Lorenzo, because they're like, oh, you would think that this would be like an act of war, of just like killing people without any sort of accountability, but this is what fascism is: colonization, white supremacy. Mexico exhausted every diplomatic option to get answers about 17 of its citizens who died in U.S. immigration custody, and no one responded. Now the government is turning to prosecutors. Yeah. So, like, this happened in Utah. These ICE raids are continuing to happen. So, like, these deaths that are happening are not including the people. It's these incidents that are happening, these tragic deaths and taking of human life, unfortunately get a lot more press than even the incidents of people just being rounded up, kidnapped, trafficked to these ICE detention centers, these concentration camps, where there are many deaths that are going underreported or unreported in general. ICE appears to make warrantless arrest inside a Salt Lake home. Regardless of whether the man in the video was evading arrest, courts have ruled that ICE can only enter homes without a warrant in a justifiable circumstance, such as a risk of public danger. Yeah, which they make up anyway. A video that shows a U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement arrest inside a Salt Lake City home went viral this week. Yeah, so this was last week. In it, agents restrain a middle-aged man and a teenager while a woman screams, "Get out of my house." The family said it was racial profiling. ICE implied it was the consequence of an attempt to evade arrest or ignore the commands of a federal agent, which also, it's like, what does evading arrest even mean? Especially when people have been terrorized and they are looking to protect themselves. People wondered in the comments what happened before the video began. Elizabeth Garcia said it started with a 7:46 a.m. call on July 7th. Her father asked her to pick him up from the gas station because he saw suspicious people looking at and getting close to him. He thought they might be undercover police, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, or immigration agents, which you don't have to be doing anything quote-unquote wrong in order for this to happen. Clearly, as we are seeing with all of these cases, this is why it is racially motivated. It is about ethnic cleansing. There has been accounts of torture and sexual abuse inside ICE facilities too. Yep, exactly. Yeah, of people like that. It should be considered lynchings of when people unalive themselves. I don't know what I'm allowed to say on Twitch, but that ICE agents were taking bets on this, of which prisoners, which people who have been kidnapped would be doing this next. That they create the conditions, making them so deplorable in order to induce this kind of thing. And that can't be separated from a lynching. Like, how is that not a lynching? It just is like a slow way for that to be happening. Where like children are in these ICE detention centers, where babies are in these detention centers, where they're separated from their families and their parents, where they get sick, where there are babies that, like, after they get out of ICE detention, they have these long-term illnesses like whooping cough that does not go away. And so then the families are left to not only have to pick up the pieces of their lives, deal with all of the trauma, they have to somehow pay for all of these medical expenses. IDF incarceration playbook, or rather the colonial playbook. Yep, IDF edition, I guess. Yeah, where it's like, this can't be separated. This is part of these colonizer tactics in having it be racially motivated, having it be part of the state of Israel as an ethno-state, but this is what the U.S. is looking at aspirationally, as wanting an ethno-state of white Christian nationalists, and it is a continuation of what even founded this so-called democracy to begin with, which is stolen land and genocide. You don't need gas chambers to have death camps. Yep, exactly. Like what we've seen in Palestine, too, of open prisons. Hey, Britt Griff. Can't stay long. Yeah, thanks for being here and for tuning in. On a lighter note, Bella says hello. Oh, hello, Bella. The cat. I remember Bella. Tell Bella I say hello back. Give Bella a pet for me. I know, I'm getting so heated with everything. But I think this is, like, we can't be talking about this shit in a way that is unemotional. Or at least, like, that's, if we are, then it's robotic and not human. Actually, like, seeing people's human dignity, it should be enraging. But also, like, it shouldn't stop here. It should be pushing us to be fighting back, to actually be getting involved. And like how I've mentioned before, of like getting involved with people who are like-minded, who are not just trying to continue these systems of oppression through so-called organizing, and actually engaging with people who are valuing each other's voices. This is so important at this time, whether this is engaging in workplace unionizing, tenant unionizing, going to protests, especially as they are not sanctioned by the police, engaging in direct action, actually like connecting with friends, talking about things, and having a time to humanize each other. That is very radical at this moment, but it should push us to be doing stuff. Okay, let's finish this video, and then I may play something to lighten things up a bit, but after we will read Othello. I mean, I do have to say thank you all for even being willing to engage in this kind of discourse, being willing to like listen to my rants, but also like having these necessary conversations and highlighting all of this. You all are extremely intelligent and engaged, and I am very grateful for you all. Not only do they deprive the Palestinian population of every necessity to life, force them to live under the threat of bombs, but they systematically eliminate any form of escape. Yep, with the organizer of the World Cup viewing parties in Gaza being drone striked last week. Yep, exactly. And like, is that being talked about in mainstream news? No. And why, like, I like, as a like continuation of like why I'm so grateful for people who are willing to engage, who are actually like plugged in this way, and like you sharing resources with me, and like making it so that we can like be spreading this information. That is a way to resist in my mind. It is not like the end all be all, of course, but like how we educate ourselves and stay informed by talking about things that are not being talked about in mainstream media, but especially what the ruling class, the 1%, the capitalist class don't want us to be speaking on. Like, as we are having all of these laws that are coming out, like that you mentioned, Linton, of like these thought crimes, saying like, you can't be for all of these things. Like, it's radical to even be like discussing this shit. The bombs planted in the places children go for their escapism. Yep, I know. It's evil. It's evil. And that's how you also know, like, that it is ethnic cleansing. It's not about seeing humanity, or it's not even it's not about valuing children, like people who are supposed to be like, oh, we care about children. What about the children? It's not about that. You getting heated seems very tame. I can't tell you how many times I've shouted at the top of my lungs in my car. Yeah. I mean, we need outlets, right? And yeah, I'm I'm grateful for like even having an audience, you all being willing to engage in this way of like us being able to recognize how fucked up the world is and talking about the things that normally we have to just like push aside in order to keep going throughout our lives. Like that type of gaslighting in society is so depressing, and it's meant to make us feel a lot of despair. And engaging with our emotions actually is like, okay, this is real. This exists, and we should be angry about what's going on. I mean, this is me heated, but also that doesn't mean that I can't like things don't build inside me, or like having like breakdowns and stuff of like screaming. That, you know, that can happen at times with everything going on, especially like on the harder days. But like, yeah, trying to find these moments of reprieve and like finding peace and like lightheartedness as well, like that is important, as long as it helps us to keep moving and it isn't a distraction.
With you. Talk about what's happening in Biddeford. What you understood happened yesterday morning. I understand, and looking at the video of through the day, that there wasn't even a crime scene set up. If you can tell us what you understand and the protests that have taken place and that are planned for today as well, outside
like
ICE
trying to create
offices in
community where we
Scarborough.
can.
The last 24 hours have been deeply painful and disturbing. Our community is hurting. A child lost her father, a woman lost her partner, and we have lost a neighbor of ours. And we are doing our best to find ways to heal and connect. Yes.
I'm wondering why the wife of the mayor is speaking and not the mayor. That's not to like be sexist. Like, I think that can, like, yeah, she should be able to speak on things, but like, is he under fire for something about like not handling the situation? Do they think that like it will look better if they have a woman talking about it? I mean, the mayor is technically like the top cop. So like if people are very upset about like the mayor not doing enough to protect people, I just want to call out that. Hello, Boonso. Welcome. Sounds like you got some fun things. You know, I'm hanging in there with everything happening in the US. Like, just trying to talk about it so that we aren't like gaslit into being like, oh, we just have to like live life and like pretend like nothing's happening. But yeah, trying to strike that balance of engaging, actually having it be a motivation for action. Yeah. Not gonna lie, I'd rather hear from Rama over Zoran a lot of the time when he gets into his strategic ambiguity. I mean, I agree. He's a good politician, and that can be kind of scary, you know, of like that means he is savvy, and when the mayor is a top cop, that means that they are going to be doing a certain amount of damage control with image, like how we were seeing with the ICE detention center in New Jersey. Mikey Sherrill, who supposedly like ran on a platform of being against ICE and Trump, she sounded like a Trump politician when she was giving her response of like, oh, I am justified in sending the police to make sure that like protests are peaceful. And it's like, that's fascist, okay? Which isn't to say Zoran is fascist, but like when you become part of the system, you often are limited to the system itself and the kind of harm that it inflicts on people. So like this does seem a little bit like damage control from what I'm seeing, but yeah, maybe we're going to get more humanity, less of like a politician answer At least I would hope so. Type shit, gotta stay proactive. Yep, exactly.
Throughout the day, there were various different gatherings, all folks from different backgrounds coming together peacefully, sharing their grief, their questions, and their worries. And knowing Maine, it's a small town, people are just disturbed and really shell shocked to know that something like this can happen in our state, a very small state with a very small immigrant population.
Yeah, it's happening
So
everywhere.
this has been a time of grieving, especially in Biddeford. We are a mill city, which was built on the backs of immigrants, whether it is Irish, Catholics, Armenians. So I think just this hits home for a lot of our community members here in Biddeford.
Yes, and can you talk some about that history, that immigrant history in Biddeford? I understand the Albanian Muslims established one of the first mosques in the United States there in 1915.
That's correct. So I grew up in Texas, and my introduction to Maine was actually just that, walking around Biddeford, learning about the immigrant community who has helped build and shape this community. As a Muslim myself, this was the last place to find out that the first mosque in United States or in North America was here, just walking distance from where I live. And I think another thing I'll just mention here, what was so moving, and I think just the irony is less than about 100 years ago on the bridge we were all gathered yesterday and today again, is the exact bridge where KKK was coming from Saco, the neighboring town, into Biddeford. And it was a Biddeford community who stood side by side with their Catholic and Franco Catholic neighbors, fighting against the KKK and the persecution. And that happened again last night and earlier yesterday, where communities from all backgrounds came together here in Biddeford, standing on that same bridge, asking and demanding justice for immigrants who are here today. Biddeford is one of the youngest cities.
How is that any different? Like the march that we saw in DC of white supremacists, those fascist losers with these other fascist losers. It's the same thing that happened with this march of the KKK coming into town that she is talking about. It's the same thing. Hamdani's relationship with the police is exactly the US and Taiwan. I think that's a pretty accurate read. Jessica Tish is the equivalent of a weapons shipment. Yeah, exactly. And him, in order to get into power, that was one of the concessions that he had to make of keeping her in power, of like, oh, she's rooting out corruption. But yeah, she is extremely Zionist, and it doesn't mean that like the police haven't been working with ICE in New York City, that they still are brutalizing marginalized people, occupying neighborhoods, predominantly Black neighborhoods in New York City, that like that has not gone away. So like, this is why I could never be a politician. I could never be a politician. Feeling like you had to be like the top cop. I could not. I would, yeah. Of like what you have to sacrifice along the way, like making all of these concessions, of like, even when him running, he didn't feel like he could say, like he had to like backtrack from his language of defunding the police, which is like, his platform that he was talking about was essentially what defunding the police originally meant, or like what it meant all along, which is like having more resources go to professionals who actually know about de-escalation and who don't have guns. That it's like, yeah. And also like how most recently there were these health clinics that opened, but as a concession to the Trump administration is how I view it. They weren't offering healthcare for trans youth, but they're offering, I think, healthcare for, you know, many other kinds of people, like everyone else essentially, that I'm like, this is a really dangerous concession that people are not paying attention to because they're just glad that like he seems to be better on so many other issues. And it's like, just because you like a politician, just because you like someone running for office, like that means you should hold them even more accountable. Or like if they claim they're for something, like actually calling them out on their shit rather than trying to say like, no, like don't talk about that, they can't get into power then, or like this will look bad for them. It's like, then who cares? If we're talking like that, they shouldn't be there to begin with. Like a community security force trained in psychology and de-escalation instead of these metaphorical cowboys of the state. Yeah, these people that are like wanting to get into these positions for like bad reasons anyway. And even if people have like decent motivations for like wanting to be a cop, especially if they come from like they are marginalized in many ways and being like, oh, I want to help marginalized people, it is so difficult to not internalize the system and like become part of the problem. Like that's why I say like I have yet to encounter any person that has been able to accomplish that, and I think that's kept me safe. I think that keeps all marginalized people safe to have that assumption, and we should have that until we are shown otherwise, like a consistent pattern of behavior of them not acting like violent fascists. Which also, speaking of the KKK, many of people who are part of the Klan are also part of the police force, also part of politics in general. Many people who join ICE. So like that can't be separated either. Of like it draws in the same kinds of people that are looking to have power over others because they feel small in their everyday lives, from what it seems like. These incel losers who can't have the confidence to actually like make friends, like form community on their own. They have to like have a gun in their hands and be brutalizing people and to feel good about themselves. Like I would feel bad for them if it wasn't so evil.
In Maine, and this has just been so devastated. There are so many beautiful kids who play in our neighborhoods, and just hearing from some of the kids who are going to summer school didn't even want to get off the bus, just fearing that they don't want to be shot in the face. So this is deeply painful. It's an immigrant community and has been for centuries. And as we gathered, we're just finding ways to heal and ask for accountability on all the
I'm a
counts.
Virgo has such good commentary on
Maine's
crime and law enforcement.
Democratic Governor Janet
I
Mills
really
and
need to
its
watch
Republican
that.
Senator Susan Collins are both calling for investigations. But what kind
I'm
of
glad you
actions
reminded
did
me
they
of that
take
show because I
before
remember
this
seeing that.
shooting and
Haven't
holding
thought
ICE
about it for a
accountable?
bit.
I think this is something that Maine has been grappling since the beginning of this year, where we have seen just the increased surge in ICE agents and ICE presence throughout our community. And while I can't speak to what their, Senator Collins or Governor Mills are doing, I can say that what I have learned and I have seen is a lot of support from our community around this. Folks are gathering. In fact, knowing Biddeford and our community, we are a aging,
why all cops are
Maine
bad.
as a whole
Yep.
is an aging population,
ACAB.
and a big
All
chunk of
cops
our
are
workforce
bastards,
relies on
bad.
immigrants. And in January, when ICE agents started surging, that began to surge, a vast majority of people didn't show up. And we were at a breaking point where our hospitals were not able to operate. And it took.
Yeah, this is what happens. This is the intended effect of making it so people are fearful to participate in everyday life, in public life. It's like, this is why this type of behavior can't be separated from the tactics of brutalizing trans people and making it illegal for trans people to be in public spaces, basically, by like having these bathroom bills and limiting the kinds of employment that we can get. But I was gonna say something else.
Governor Mills, our
Hello,
elected
Stuart Little is my
officials to
son.
work
Welcome.
together to find ways to make sure
How are things?
our community feels safe. And we were given the impression that ICE is going away, but that was certainly and is certainly not the case. And yesterday was a strong reminder of what our elected officials need to do as we continue to move and for the survival of our state as we know it today.
Isha Khan is the wife of the Biddeford mayor. We're also joined by Nathan Bernard, who is a correspondent for Dropsite News. His most recent piece headlined in letter, Plattner Volunteer Network warns Dems nominee must back same agenda to win our full support. Why?
Someday the whole world would be like Greece and Italy, anarchists basically running the nations and being untouchable, having peaceful, cop-free, autonomous zones. Trained population ready to revolt. If they can do it, why can't we? Which, I mean, yeah, there have been a number of like resistance efforts that have been able to gain ground in those places, but also doesn't mean that they aren't experiencing their own issues in those places. Like, earlier, Photo Piadini was mentioning like some of the people who are still in power are like these families in Italy that they come from these earlier colonial families. But yeah, I mean, I can admire the optimism. It's with the hope that like, I mean, this is where we got into this yesterday of talking about like, are people naturally good or bad? And I think people when they are born are not necessarily like inclined to be evil and wanting to dehumanize others, but that like these systems are so nefarious that it's difficult to make it so like people aren't conditioned to want to harm others in certain ways. But I mean, really having an educated, trained population, that would be the ideal, especially if we are able to have communities have more autonomy, not have like be reliant on representative so-called democracy where our consent is diluted through these systems. But yeah, it's like we can't also, like, at the risk of being like overly optimistic, we also like can't limit our imagination for like the world we want to see, because that is part of what the ruling class and 1% want. And education and training starts with what as we and individuals do. Yeah, exactly. Of like, we really can't change other people. We really can just establish our own opinions, engage in critical thinking, try to be as informed as possible, decolonize our minds, talk about what these hierarchies of human dignity are, how they have existed throughout time, and like how we try to combat that. And that includes like humanizing ourselves, which like how like talking about earlier, these ICE agents of like these people who are so self-hating, of like the more we can engage in like actual like self-care or like establishing our own sense of confidence that comes from like having principles and morals and understanding what we believe and like seeing our own humanity, that like we then can be offering other people more respect and seeing their humanity, which I know like sounds cheesy, but I also believe that kind of the concept as well of like, if we don't like honor our own like consent and like how we are being treated in society, like how can we honor the consent of other people and also stand up for other people, like be united. You can organize people who already know their stuff. Focusing on converting people often isn't fruitful. Yep, I agree. And unfortunately, like growing up Mormon, have experience in that. Whether it's converting people to Mormonism, since I went on a mission that was awful, do not recommend, or whether it is trying to deprogram people from Mormonism. Like, I've experienced it on both of these ends. It really is just about like providing information to people and education, and then like letting people do what they will and decide from there.
In now with this tragedy today, because of course what's happening now is happening on behalf of the U.S. government. So politics really matter right now. Nathan, if you can talk about what we know at this point. You have the information relayed by the independent Maine Senator Angus King that the 26-year-old Colombian man, Juan, had been given an order that he was not the target. Now, it was Angus King who released this and not the federal government originally. And then you have these mass protests in the midst of the senatorial race, and who is senator certainly matters, with Senator Collins being the deciding vote on the tens of billions more dollars that went to ICE and CBP. Can you talk about what the people who are running right now are saying and doing? Are they participating in the protests?
Yeah. There was a vigil in Portland where several of the candidates, Nirav Shah, Troy Jackson, both attended and gave speeches calling to abolish ICE. And
Nirav Shah
I know
is the
from the
former
volunteers
health
on the Plattner
official.
campaign.
Just to give global context for people who aren't following this closely, Nirav Shah is the former health official in Maine, and Troy Jackson is the logger in Maine who has also announced he wants to run.
Yeah, he announced he wanted to run
Nirav Shah
after
was our
Graham
CDC
Plattner
director
dropped
during
out.
the COVID pandemic. Troy Jackson was the former Senate president, a Democrat who, like you said, is a third-generation logger. I think there's a lot of angst. There's a lot of frustration with Susan Collins. Not only did she vote to fund ICE with another $70 billion, she was the deciding vote for that. And
ICE
when
has
that
more
$70
money
billion
than most
passed,
militaries
there was no accountability.
of
I mean, just like we
world's
saw in
nation
Houston,
states.
the ICE agents there were not wearing body cameras. The ICE agents in Biddeford were not wearing body cameras. And just like Isha was talking about, this is the...
To be clear, okay, just because they aren't wearing body cameras because they don't want footage of it, but body cameras do not stop people from fascist behavior. Okay, we have seen that there are police who wear body cameras that still do get up to violent bullshit and brutalize and kill people with body cameras, that they can often suppress the footage, claim that they weren't wearing body cameras, and also use it as a way to surveil people. So like, that's not the end all be all, which many their liberal people especially are like, oh, they just need body cameras to hold them accountable. It's like, okay, that also does not.
Community is having to
That doesn't
watch
work.
these folks.
We need them
Community is
gone.
having to document ICE's actions.
Them
And a
meaning
big push
the
from the
police and
volunteers from the
ICE.
Plattner campaign and voters all across Maine are that they don't think there is a way to reform this agency. They think it needs to be abolished. They think that no more funding should go to ICE. And we see when more funding does come to ICE, what happens. The funding was just released. We now have a death, a tragic death in Houston. We have a tragic death in Biddeford, Maine, a big city and a small town in completely different parts of the United States. So I think people want to hold Susan Collins accountable for her role in this. And when we look at accountability again, DHS in Boston is now going to investigate what happens here in Maine. So we have DHS investigating DHS.
Yeah,
It's
that shithead,
it's a
Susan
situation
Collins.
where all of the candidates that, no, I shouldn't say all the candidates, the majority of
All
the
these
candidates that are running
boomers
right now
who are now
know
just
that
starting
if
to
they're going
die
to get the
in
support
office.
of the 150,000 voters who just voted for the Plattner campaign, a platform of economic populism, progressivism, built from the grassroots, that they're going to have to express intent explicitly to end the mass deportation system.
Showing what you sent, Linton.
Gonna have to get. an armed response vehicle here.
They felt that I did not communicate professionally enough when I made my report of being stalked. So the force is openly admitting that they expect victims to turn up and communicate in a professional manner, not a distressed one. Now, you'd think this meant that maybe I started screaming at the operator or something like that, but no, it was because I used capital letters and underlines. They criticised my blunt and direct communication despite knowing that I'm autistic. But that aside, I was actually raising a very important safeguard, which is that the operator did not understand stalking. What I was underlining was their own guidance and policies after the case of Gracie Spinks, a female stalking victim who was murdered in Derby, and Derbyshire Constabulary were found to be responsible for that due to poor practice. Now, this was a professional standards letter, and they completely sidestepped my complaint about the operator not knowing what stalking was and just concentrated on mine and the operator's tone, saying that I wasn't professional enough, even though I'm not a professional at Derbyshire Constabulary. If I am, please pay me so I can sue you.
Yep. Jesus. Yeah. And this is constantly the thing of like evading arrest or like, oh, they were acting in an erratic manner. Oh yeah, maybe it's because we have these people with a huge power imbalance trying to be intimidating and scare people. That it's like, is it any wonder why people react in the way that they do? Of like, ugh. So they're going to continue talking about Susan Collins. I don't really want to keep talking about her. There was another post that I wanted to show. Violently went after her for pointing out their inadequacies. Piggy's fragile ass egos. Yeah, exactly. And we see how with the more power people have, the more privilege they have, the more they are allowed to have these fragile egos where they can be offended by everything and where they see threats everywhere, which is why, like, as we're talking about like mental illness in general, it's like it breeds a lot of like delusion paranoia, where like delusional paranoia, where it's like people who are viewed as like criminally mentally ill, it's usually about class, because it seems to me it's criminally mentally ill to be hoarding $1 trillion when the world is on fire and people are in need, you know? Okay. This is by Ebony Warrior, and he has some really great content. He is talking about this issue that I wanted to highlight, and he also talks about the limitations of electoralism that I think is good to be highlighting, because Susan Collins, she voted for increased ICE funding, so like unfortunately elected politics do affect our material conditions, but also how like if it wasn't her, like it probably would have been someone else, you know, of like I'm willing to be proven wrong about electoral politics, but you know, it's again like talking about the petit bourgeois and how it's just like cycling different kinds of people in these positions, and sometimes they're just savvier enemies when they claim they are for the working class.
A legal resident of the United States with a social security number. He didn't try to run, was trying to pull over, and they shot him in the face, and his 3-year-old was in the car. I want to know, like, what is it going to take you all to understand that we are past the point of voting our way out of this? I feel like I'm a broken record at this point. You can't vote your way out of this. They are killing U.S. citizens. I want to be clear that it doesn't matter if it's a U.S. citizen or it's someone who is not here legally. We should not have fucking Gestapo murdering people in the streets, period. And 11 people have died. 11 people have died under Trump's administration by ICE. 11. That's 11 too many. That's not even referring to the people being murdered by law enforcement, regular law enforcement.
Yeah,
Okay,
police.
that's not counting them. That's
Or
11
people
by
in the
ICE
detention
agents.
centers, concentration camps.
But y'all think we gonna vote our way out of this? I just watched videos of people being brutalized by the National Guard in New Orleans. What we have the military on the streets in this country enforcing the law. We have ICE agents, the SS running around murdering people willy-nilly. You think we're gonna vote our way out of this? You think, oh no, here the midterms are coming. If you're wondering why I haven't really been posting all that much about political stuff, because it genuinely feels like I'm talking to a brick wall. Violence is never the answer. Somehow they keep using violence. But for us, violence is never the answer. Okay.
Yeah, going back to the earlier question of violence, what does it even mean to be violent? She does some of the best reporting.
Picture of a deceased woman's fanny, but due to her horrific death, there wasn't enough left. PC Josh Priest also told colleagues that there was nobody to rape at the scene because the victim had already died. And what did Derbyshire Constabulary do about this dangerous officer? Nothing. Instead, they arrested the whistleblower that took this information to professional standards. The whistleblower was arrested for attempting to pursue a relationship with an alive victim. And that officer was found guilty of misconduct in a public office in Crown Court. When I posted about this, many of you were concerned at the discrepancy between how Derbyshire Constabulary have handled the two cases. And as Derbyshire Constabulary had posted about this conviction on their own social media, many of you went and left your comments, which Derbyshire Constabulary were quick to delete and then mute. Derbyshire Constabulary is not a content creator. They are an institution, which means that you have the right to Article 10 public protected speech. Effectively, Derbyshire Constabulary deleting your comments is deleting your right to protest and your right to free speech. Many of you also questioned Derbyshire Constabulary's decision to arrest me and seize my device on the same week that I was supposed to attend the hearing. And of course, in typical Derbyshire Constabulary style, they deleted those comments too. And so the question remains, why is Derbyshire Constabulary not pressing charges against a police officer who admits to the intention to take pornographic pictures of deceased victims, but is prosecuting a police officer for intending to have a relationship with an alive victim? And if you're watching this, Derbyshire Constabulary, which I'm sure you are, I want my phone back before one of your officers starts taking pornographic pictures of dead victims on my phone.
Good for her. Yeah. Jesus. Yeah, and this is like, what else are they getting up to that we don't know about, that they are covering up? Of like the case of Nolan Wells, of him most likely being murdered, being with some white friends and their families on vacation, and him not coming back. Of all of these more famous people like Colin Kaepernick actually paying for an independent autopsy because the autopsy came back and was like, nothing's wrong. Like, this is a pattern of the system abusing human beings, especially the more melanin they have in their skin, but also other intersections of marginalization that they are experiencing. That it's like, this is part of a pattern. And when there is no accountability, the behavior gets worse and worse. Like, as we have seen with the IDF and with settlers in Israel, of like the impunity and not having accountability, it makes people feel like they can do anything when they will be able to get away with it. I saw this the other day, or not the other day, I guess this was today. This was a flight that was leaving the Salt Lake City airport of ICE people who are being trafficked. This is trafficking, to be clear. So this is taking people, especially since we don't even know like the inner workings of their like their processes, if these are people who are from all over the place, but this was a plane that was leaving Salt Lake City airport. So if there are if you want to spread that and share that, because this could be like, it's not just people in Utah, like that should matter as well. Like matter to everyone, but like this is including people from all over, most likely. Like actually getting some photos of like whoever was taking this, like, good for them, because this is like what it takes for us to try to get, like, identify people. And most of the time people aren't in contact with their families. They aren't allowed to talk to families. They aren't allowed legal representation. They are certainly not allowed due process of any sort. It just is outright fascism, ethnic cleansing. So yeah, if we can share that around. So many recent lynchings in similar cases. Yeah, it's all connected. So this is happening. This came out. So this is happening in Salt Lake. But unfortunately, I'm wondering if they got a police permit for this. That's not something I like, because that means it's just being sanctioned by the state, by our oppressors. This happened after the killing of Lorenzo as well as Juan. So this is happening on Saturday in Washington Square Park in Salt Lake. If there are other protests that are happening, particularly in the US or in the world at large, that are against the genocide happening to Palestinians, the genocide happening to people in Sudan and the Congo, as well as the violence that is happening to Iranian people, the people of Lebanon, that is sponsored by the United States, that is being pursued by the genocidal state of Israel. Like, we all need to be, like, in places. Bodies in places matters. Does it always move the needle? That is up for debate. I know many people, especially on the left, say that, like, protests don't have as much effect as what they used to. But if we don't have demands with our protests, then we're just, like, having, like, an emotionally fueled gathering. It's not actually pushing the needle, because the forces that exist with these oppressive systems need to feel pressure. And in order to do that, we need demands. And we also need to make them feel pressure of, like, what happens if they don't actually fulfill these demands. So, there we go. There really is so much cruelty and evil existing, and it's hard to maintain the belief that human beings are not inherently evil. But the more we can engage in action, the more it, like, even from the selfish standpoint of it regulating our nervous systems, of it helping us not to keep these things internalized. Like, when we are feeling these feelings and we aren't doing something about it, it can make us sick. It can make us, whether that's like feeling it more like bodily or mentally, which I guess our mind is part of our body anyway. This not only helps us to have the motivation to keep going, it also is hopefully with a desire to help other people, that as we are engaged with community, that as we are, linking arms with like-minded people, especially people like who are viewing you as a person and actually want to listen to you, like, find those kinds of people, because these are the people that we need to be keeping close, the people that we can have these kinds of conversations with, and hopefully also go to events, get into direct action, be part of workplace organizing, in tenant organizing, like community organizing in general, like getting to know our neighbors, making sure there are like alarm systems that we can be setting up. Anyway, thank you all for listening and engaging. It's important that we talk about these things, and even more important that we are doing something about it, of not just sitting with it and then trying to feel like we have to be distracted from the world we're existing in. Ooh, we have an update on some of your artwork, Linton. No, it wasn't this furnished. Yay! I'm gonna show this. This is what Linton has been working on his comic. This looks good. Yeah, I love the lighting that you've chosen and the color scheme. I really like the reds. Very cool. Thank you for sharing. Also, I do want to like share some of your stuff for Culture Corner if you want like a little segment if you're interested. I can do that. So like as you're providing updates, I'm always happy to show them, but also if you're wanting to like save certain things for Friday, I can do that as well. Just whatever you are wanting to do. This is your art. Yeah, engaging in artwork. Engaging in the things that we love to do that humanize us. Okay. Shall we read? This is continuing Act 4 of Othello, Scene 2. So in the previous scene, we broke it up into a couple of readings, but Othello has an announcement that Cassio is leaving and that he got a promotion, and he is now believing pretty fully that Desdemona is unfaithful to him despite not talking to her at all, which is pretty dumb. That they're all acting in a dumb manner, so it's not like Iago is that smart. We're not giving him that much credit. And in the last scene, we see that he struck Desdemona, and the person who came in with the announcement was like, I heard such great things about him. I don't believe that he's such a great person anymore. So already we see this is starting to affect not only Othello, how he views himself and other people, but his reputation. Only a few more models, and then it'll be character design. Oh, I love that. It's very exciting. Okay. So, enter Othello and Emilia. Emilia is the wife of Iago. Othello, you have seen nothing then? Emilia, nor ever heard, nor ever did suspect. Othello, yes, you have seen Cassio and she together. Emilia, but then I saw no harm, and then I heard each syllable that breath made up between them. Othello, what, did they never whisper? Emilia, never, my lord. Nor send you out the way? Never. To fetch her fan, her gloves, her mask, nor nothing? Never, my lord. That's strange. I durst, my lord, to wager she is honest, lay down my soul at stake. If you think other, remove your thought. It doth abuse your bosom, if any wretch have put this in your head. Let heaven requite it with the serpent's curse. Footnote. In Genesis, the curse that God laid upon the serpent who deceived Eve. For if she be not honest, chaste, and true, there is no man happy. The purest of their wives is foul as slander. So she's like, I believe Desdemona. She's actually coming to her aid, coming to her, defend her, even though Emilia gave Iago the handkerchief, so it's helping to, like, cause this problem. Othello, bid her come hither. Go. Exit Emilia. She says enough, yet she's a simple bawd. Okay. That cannot say as much. Footnote, yet it would be a simple-minded go-between who can't say as much as she did. This is a subtle whore, a closet lock and key of villainous secrets, and yet she'll kneel and pray. I ha' seen her do it. Enter Desdemona and Emilia. My lord, what is your will? Othello. Pray you, Chuck, come hither. So he is referring to Chuck in as like a pet name. What is your pleasure? Let me see your eyes. Look in my face. What horrible fancy is this? Because essentially she thinks he's making fun of her since he just hit her, that he wants to see like her teary eyes. Othello to Emilia. Some function of your mistress? Footnote. Fulfill your bod's function by guarding the door. So he's ordering Emilia about. Leave procreance alone and shut the door. Cough or cry, hem, if anybody. Your mystery, nay, dispatch. Meaning your profession. So, like, your profession is at stake. Exit Emilia. Desdemona. Upon my knees, what doth your speech import? I understand a fury in your words, but not the words. Othello. Why, what art thou? Your wife, my lord, your true and loyal wife. Come, swear it. Damn thyself, lest being like one of heaven, the devils themselves should fear to seize thee. Therefore be double damned. Swear thou art honest. Heaven doth truly know it? Heaven truly knows that thou art false as hell. To whom, my lord? With whom? How am I false? Othello, weeping. Oh, Desdemona! Oh, Desdemone! Away! 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 Desdemona. Alas, the heavy day! Why do you weep? Am I the motive of these tears, my lord? If haply you my father do suspect, an instrument of this your calling back, lay not your blame on me. If you have lost him, I have lost him too. So meaning, like, are you sad because my dad died? Othello. Had it pleased God to try me with affliction, had he rained all kind of sores and shames on my bare head, steeped me in poverty to the very lips, given to captivity me and my utmost hopes, I should have found in some place of my foul soul a drop of patience. But alas, to make me the fixed figure for the time of scorn, to point his slow and moving finger at. Yet could I bear that too? Well, very well. Footnote. There's a little fly in here. The designated object of scorn for this hateful time to point as on a clock face, its slowly moving hand. But there where I have garnered up my heart, meaning stored up his heart, where either I must live or bear no life, the fountain from the which my current runs, or else dries up, to be discarded thence, or keep it as a cistern for foul toads, to knot and gender in, meaning to couple and engender. You mean gender? Gender fluidity? Because same. Anyway. Footnote. The language here imagines Desdemona as the source of Othello's potential offspring. Turn thy complexion there. Patience, thou young and rose-lipped cherubin. Aye, here look, grim as hell. Footnote. Change color at the thought of that, Patience, or perhaps Patience and the cherubin are Desdemona, whom Othello directs to gaze at his own face or a mirror. Desdemona. I hope my noble lord esteems me honest. Oh, aye. As summer flies are in the shambles, meaning slaughterhouse. I was just talking about a fly. That quicken even with blowing. Footnote. Who come to life or bring their offspring to life and hence make the meat foul as soon as the eggs are deposited. The point seems to be the speed of breeding inferred from Desdemona's supposed infidelity. O thou weed, who art so lovely fair, and smellest so sweet, that the sense aches at thee. Would thou hadst never been born. Desdemona. Alas, what ignorant sin have I committed? Was this fair paper, this most goodly book, made to write whore upon? What committed? Committed! O thou public commoner, I should make very forges of my cheeks that would to cinders burn up modesty. Did I but speak thy deeds? What committed? Okay, turning the page. Heaven stops the nose at it, and the moon winks, meaning closes its eyes. The bawdy wind that kisses all it meets is hushed within the hollow mine of earth, and will not heart. What committed? By heaven, you do me wrong. So he's trying to get her to tell her, he's like, you tell me. He's trying to get her to tell him what she did. And she's like, tell me what I did wrong. And then he's like, you tell me. Are you not a strumpet? No, as I am a Christian. If to preserve this vessel for my lord from any other foul, unlawful touch be not to be a strumpet, I am none. What, not a whore? No, as I shall be saved. Is it possible? Oh, heaven, forgive us. I cry you mercy, then. I took you for that cunning whore of Venice that married with Othello. Calling, you, mistress, that have the office opposite to St. Peter, and keeps the gate of hell. So he's calling to Amelia. Enter Amelia. You, I, you. We had done our course, meaning business, giving money. There's money for your pains. I pray you, turn the key and keep our counsel. Exit. Amelia. Alas, what does this gentleman conceive? How do you, madam? How do you, my good lady? Faith, half asleep. Good madam, what's the matter with my lord? With who? Why, with my lord, madam. Who is thy lord? He that is yours, sweet lady? So, Desdemona seems to be kind of like dazed. She doesn't know what's going on. And then she's also like, wait. Like she's distressed. Like, who are you talking about? Is it Othello? Are you talking about Iago? Who is thy lord? He that is yours, sweet lady. I had none. Do not talk to me, Amelia. She's like, he's not mine anymore, which is a very sad line. I cannot weep, nor answers have I none, but what should go by water, meaning appear in tears. Prithee tonight lay on my bed my wedding sheets, remember, and call thy husband hither. Amelia, here's a change indeed. Exit. Desdemona, 'tis meet. I should be used so, very meet. How have I been behaved that he might stick the smallest opinion in my least misuse? Footnote. Perhaps which would cause him to suspect even slightly the least faith. Enter Iago and Amelia. What is your pleasure, madam? Iago. How is it with you? I cannot tell. Those that do teach young babes do it with gentle means and easy tasks. He might ha' chid me so, for in good faith I am a child to chiding. Iago. What is the matter, lady? Amelia. Alas, Iago, my lord hath so behorred her, meaning called her a whore, that thrown such despite and heavy terms on her, that true hearts cannot bear it. Am I that name, Iago? What name, fair lady? Such as she said my lord did say I was. She's like, do you think I'm a whore? Amelia, he called her whore. He's like, stop. She's like, you know what she's talking about, Amelia. Amelia's saying this, she's like, stop making her repeat it. He called her whore. A beggar in his drink could not have laid such terms upon his callet, meaning his whore. Why did he so? I do not know. I am sure I am none such. Do not weep, do not weep. Alas the day. Hath she forsook so many noble matches, her father and her country and her friends, to be called whore? Would it not make one weep? It is my wretched fortune. Iago, beshrew him for it, meaning curse him. How comes this trick upon him? Nay, heaven doth know. Him, Iago, pretending like he is not the one to create this situation. Amelia, I will be hanged if some eternal villain, some busy and insinuating rogue, some cozening, I believe. Cogging, meaning deceiving and cheating. Slave, to get some office, have not devised this slander. I will be hanged else. So also talking about Othello as a slave, this is racially motivated and demeaning to him, that I doubt she would have been calling a white man a slave, particularly in this situation. Iago, fie, there is no such man. It is impossible. Desdemona, if any such there be, heaven pardon him. A halter pardon him. Hangman's noose, so Emilia is mad on behalf of Desdemona. And hell gnaw his bones. Why should he call her whore? Who keeps her company? What place, what time, what form, what likelihood? The Moor is abused by some most villainous knave, some base, notorious knave, some scurvy fellow. Yeah, your husband. Someone who mistreats you as well. Oh, heaven, that such companions thou'dst unfold, thou didst. So it's like thou'dst unfold, meaning reveal, and put in every honest hand a whip, to lash the rascals naked through the world, even from the east to the west. Iago, speak within the door, meaning more softly. Emilia, oh, fie upon them. Some such squire he was that turned your wit the seamy side without, and made you to suspect me with the Moor. So she's like, you were suspecting me with being with him? I don't like him because how he's treating Desdemona. You are a fool. Go to. So Iago's calling her a fool. Leave. Desdemona. Oh God, Iago, what shall I do to win my lord again? Stop. Everyone needs to stop asking his fucking advice, okay? Good friend, go to him. For by this light of heaven I know not how I lost him. She kneels. Here I kneel. If e'er my will did trespass against his love, either in discourse or thought or actual deed, or that mine eyes, mine ears, or any sense delighted them in any other form, meaning took pleasure in anyone but him, or that I do not yet, and ever did, and ever will, though he do shake me off, to beggarly divorcement, love him dearly, comfort, forswear me. Unkindness may do much, and his unkindness may defeat my life, but never take my love. Oops. So she's like, the unkindness may make me feel defeated for my whole life, but it won't ever ruin my love of him, love for him. I cannot say whore. It does abhor me, now I speak the word. So it's a play on words. Right there. To do the act that might the addition earn, meaning like, actually be unfaithful. Not the world's massive vanity could make me. Iago, I pray you be content. 'Tis but his humour. The business of the state does him offence. And he does chide with you. If 'twere no other, it is but so, I warrant. Flourish within. So that means like a horn, like an announcement of trumpets of sorts. Hark! How these instruments summon you to supper. The messengers of Venice stays the meat, meaning he's waiting to eat. Go in and weep not. All things shall be well. Yeah, we don't trust you, Iago. Exit Desdemona and Emilia. Enter Roderigo. How now, Roderigo? I do not find that thou dealtst justly with me. So now Roderigo is mad at Iago. What in the contrary? Every day thou daffst me with some device, Iago, and rather, as it seems to me now, keepest me from all conveniency than suppliest me with the least advantage of hope. So you put me off with some trick, is what he's saying. Which, that's true. I will indeed no longer endure it, nor am I yet persuaded to put up in peace what already I have foolishly suffered. Will you hear me, Roderigo? Faith, I have heard too much. For your words and performances are no kin together. You charge me most unjustly. With naught but truth, I have wasted myself out of my means. The jewels you have had for me to deliver Desdemona would have half corrupted a votarist, meaning a nun. You have told me she hath received him, and returned me expectations and comforts of sudden respect and acquaintance, but I find none. So Iago's stealing his money. because Rodrigo is paying Iago. No, he's not. He is giving these like gems and stuff to Iago to give to Desdemona to gain her favor. Iago, well, go to, very well. Rodrigo, very well, go to. I cannot go to, man, nor 'tis very well. Nay, I think it scurvy, and begin to find myself fopped in it, meaning made a fool. Very well. Rodrigo, I tell you not 'tis very well. I will make myself known to Desdemona. If she will return me my jewels, I will give over my suit and repent my unlawful solicitation. If not, assure yourself I will seek satisfaction of you. You have said now. You have said now, meaning you have finished now. Rodrigo, I, and said nothing but what I protest intendment of doing. Why now, I see there's metal in thee, and even from this instant do build on thee a better opinion than ever before. Give me thy hand, Rodrigo. Thou hast taken against me a most just exception, but yet I protest I have dealt most directly in thy affair. Rodrigo, it hath not appeared. I grant indeed it hath not appeared, and your suspicion is not without wit and judgment. But, Rodrigo, if thou hast that in thee, indeed, which I have greater reason to believe now than ever, I mean purpose, courage, and valour, this night show it. If thou the night following enjoy not Desdemona, take me from this world with treachery, and devise engines for my life. Meaning, plot against me. Well, what is it? Is it within reason and compass? Sir, there is a special commission come from Venice to depute Cassio in Othello's place. Is that true? Why then, Othello and Desdemona return again to Venice. Oh no, he goes into Mauritania, and takes away with him the fair Desdemona, unless his abode be lingered here by some accident, wherein none can be so determinate as removing of Cassio. Footnote, so, Mauritania is a country in the Western Sahara. Rodrigo, how do you mean removing him? Why, by making him incapable of Othello's place, knocking out his brains. He's like killing him. And that you would have me to do? Aye, and if you dare do yourself a profit and a right, he sups tonight with a harlotry, and thither I will go to him. He knows not yet of his honourable fortune. If you will watch his going thence, which I will fashion to fall out between 12 and 1, you may take him at your pleasure. I will be near to second your attempt, and he shall fall between us. Come, stand not amazed at it, but go along with me. I will show you such a necessity in his death that you shall think yourself bound to put it on him. It is now high supper time, and the night grows to waste. About it. I will hear further reason for this, Iago, and you shall be satisfied. So Rodrigo still is not convinced, but Iago is like, okay, I'll convince you. It'll be all right. You'll be my little stooge, per usual. Okay. And that's the end of scene 2 of Act 4. We're going to get to scene 3 tomorrow. And we will also watch some of these videos that you lovely people shared. We'll also be getting into the continued history of Turtle Island as a continuation of talking about these colonizer tactics and what ICE is doing. So, we also... Oh, I forgot about this. We'll be getting into the reading of The Bluest Eye. So we are reading to the section Winter, which is probably our longest amount of reading. I think I will also be starting a little bit earlier tomorrow. I mean, I know I say this, but I think I actually will be able to do this time. So you can turn on notifications, or if you don't have Twitch notifications turned on, look for them in the Discord. I need to unlock things in the Discord. If that's not working for you, then you can follow me on Instagram, where I announce it on my Instagram stories as well as TikTok stories. So a number of avenues to get a notification for when I'm streaming tomorrow. I'm not exactly sure when I will be able to, but there you go. I will be trying around the 2:30 time. All right. Thank you all for being here. It was lovely chatting with you all. I hope you have a good rest of your evening, day, wherever you are, and I will see you soon. Okay, bye.